Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel called Living in Hayward, where we talk about all things real estate related and also just about living in Hayward, Wisconsin. It's a beautiful area. If you've never been here, you should definitely come and visit. Check out the videos on my channel about the best of Hayward, and there's lots of other good information about the lakes in the area, lots about real estate. So I'm Audrey Miller. I'm the broker owner of Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team. I'd love to have you subscribe, follow along with my channel, comment, share it with a friend, click the notifications button so that you get an update whenever I put out a new video. And if you're ever looking to buy or sell, please feel free to reach out to me directly by phone, text, email. I am your local real estate agent / maybe expert on some days from the Hayward, Wisconsin area, and I'm glad you're joining me today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about time frame for selling in northern Wisconsin. People often ask me this question, so I wanted to address this, give you some data about that, give you some suggestions about when you might want to list your property, as we do have a seasonal nature to our real estate market here in northern Wisconsin, and also just some other seller advice and seller tips and answers to a few commonly asked questions. So I'm happy to have you with me today. So a question that I get a lot is about what time of year a seller should be looking to sell. People often ask me, like, so is there a better time of year, worse time of year? What are the trends on selling? You know, this is a question that often comes up during listing appointments. So I put together a little bit of information because we are definitely in a unique market here in northern Wisconsin. If you were in Florida, I'm sure there'd be different seasonalities, or even if you were in Tennessee. But obviously we have a high season and a low season for selling here in northern Wisconsin. There's not a ton of real estate activity in the months of probably from mid-November to mid-February. It's shorter than you would think in terms of a season. That's really only 3 months that it's quite slow. It's not that no real estate sells during that time. It definitely does. But these charts are going to kind of show you what the dynamics are of listing your property in northern Wisconsin and what might make sense. So what I tell sellers typically is anytime there is not ice and snow is a good time to list, with the exception of listing in very, very late fall, such as maybe this time of year, late October, early November, when you really only have just a couple of weeks at most to have your property on the market. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But you can list, especially in a fast moving market, you can list the whole way up to mid-October, maybe a little bit later, depending on the year, and still have a good 3 to 4 weeks on the market. Since things are selling really quickly, typically, especially lakefront property, you likely will have your buyer within a couple weeks anyway, but you are getting then into the territory of having to move in the wintertime and the buyer having to move in the wintertime. And that is one objection I hear a lot for buying or selling in the winter. Moving is just simply more difficult in the wintertime. So here's a few charts that might be helpful to you to kind of look at when you may want to list your property for sale in the Hayward and surrounding areas. So this is from the years of 2023 and 2024, as you can see here. Now we don't have the fourth quarter of 2024 filled in yet because that is the time frame we are currently in right now. But this shows you first quarter, so January through the end of March, right around 25 properties sold in all of Sawyer County. Now here, when you get into the second quarter, April through the end of June, we're up to probably 85 or 90. Third quarter historically and typically has the most closings, and then we're back down in the fourth quarter to the same level as the second quarter. But this first quarter is by far the least closings. Here's the thing you have to keep in mind. From the time a property goes under contract until it closes is typically around 45 days. So these properties that are closing in April, May, and June would have likely come on the market in February, March, April. They need some time to get under contract and then some time to close. So if you remember from prior videos in 2024 and really in 2023 as well, our average days on market from the time of listing to closing is right around 90 days. So you take these dates and you back it up 3 months essentially from the time it was actually listed till it closes. These pieces of information are based on when the closing happens. So that's why you see the fourth quarter still being pretty high. This is because those properties came on the market 90 days prior to October, November, or December, and then they closed in that fourth quarter. But new listings coming on the market would be very slim in the months of November and December, and those would tend to close in the first quarter in a normal cycle. However, the reason the first quarter is so low is because almost no one lists their properties in November and December. You've got the holidays, you have Thanksgiving, bad weather, snow and ice. I would never really recommend listing a lakefront property during time when there's snow and ice on the ground. Buyers like to see their frontage. They like to see the elevation to the water. They like to see the water clarity, the bottom of the lake, all of that. So listing during that time frame is pretty counterproductive unless you're really in a situation where you need to sell. And as far as off water, that's a possibility. You can list off water property in the wintertime. There's still a lot of buyers that don't want to move or buy property in the wintertime. But if that's the timing that makes sense for you, I would have no problem advising to list in the wintertime if that's the option that works best for you. It's not preferable, but it's definitely doable when you are off water. And then if you look at 2024, we just were up a little bit more in sales in the first quarter for whatever reason, but still by far the lowest. Second and third quarters, again, the trajectory is similar, just slightly less difference between the two. I will say in my business, I think the third quarter is typically my biggest sales quarter, which would be similar to what you see on these graphs. And then I would expect the fourth quarter here to be, somewhere in this area. And again, this is for all of Sawyer County. So when you're thinking about when to list, early in the spring is a very good time. As soon as snow and ice are gone, people like to get into their cabins before Memorial Day if possible, if they're buying a second home. And then there's really no bad time throughout the summer and into the fall until you get a little too late in the year where you're limiting your listing time. One of the things us as agents often do in northern Wisconsin here as well is that we will do a listing for a couple of months. Let's say a seller comes to me and it's September and they want to list. I'll say, yes, there's plenty of time to still list this fall. Let's get it on the market. I personally will do something like a 60-day listing contract time frame, and with the understanding that if it doesn't sell in that time, when it comes back on the spring, that the seller will choose to list with me again. Otherwise, I typically would do a 6-month minimum listing contract. So we'll put it on the market for say mid-September through mid-November. It'll expire. We'll leave it off the market for the winter, and then we'll be able to put it back on the market as a brand new listing in the spring. So that's another strategy that people will often use. If the property doesn't sell, they'll take it off in the winter for a few months. And since the rule with our MLS is you have to have the property off the market for 30 days before you can put it back on as a new listing, having it off for the months of December, January, or parts of November and February give you plenty of time to have that gap where you can put it back on as a new listing and the days start over from 0 in terms of days on market. And then let's just take a quick look at a little more information. This comes from the WRA website, and this is actually public information that anyone can look at, but it shows different market trends by area in the state, by county, and all of that. So this covers a little bit wider time frame from 2020 the whole way to 2024. This is in the whole north region of the state, so that would be a larger area. I'm probably going to the Minnesota border, to the north and the west, halfway across the state, maybe over towards like Park Falls to the east and down to Eau Claire to the south. But this still gives you a really good idea of this same trends in terms of when properties are closing, and you back that up about 90 days. That tells you when they're coming on the market and when might be a good time to list based on this. So you can see this follows the same type of trajectory, which is this trend. Less listings less closings January, February, March, April, highest number of closings in June, July, August, September, October, starting to be less in November, December, and then considerably lower in January, February, because that means that properties are not coming on the market or going under contract typically in November and December. And then I have one more piece of data here for you as well. This is specifically in Sawyer County with the same time frame, 2022 to 2024, and the same type of data, but just for Sawyer County. So again, same trajectory here. Now, for some reason, we had unusually high sales a couple of years in January. This is not typical, but if you follow, again, this curve, really high number of closings, June through October, November, back down, and the lowest months, again, January, February, March, that first quarter in terms of closings. So I think that could be helpful to you when thinking about when to list. Now, obviously, in a market where things are taking longer to sell, this information would be slightly different, but we've been in this similar time frame for listing to closing in this entire time frame that's covered by this chart. We've been in that 75 to 90 day time frame. So then just to give you a few other seller tips and answer a few questions that come up pretty commonly in my business. Excuse this, I feel like I look like a priest today with this little white on my collar. It's kind of cracking me up, but anyway, I digress. So a couple of things when you are considering listing, choosing the right agent obviously is super important. So I would be a good person to call to discuss comparative market analysis. I do have extensive experience in the area. I'm the highest selling female agent in all of Sawyer and Washburn County, and I am the second highest selling agent in all of Sawyer County, 2 years running now. And plan to continue that. So anyway, if you want to learn more about me, I did a video recently talking about how I got into real estate and all of that. You could feel free to watch that. But choosing the right agent, super important. But beyond that, as far as a seller, what things can you do to help your property sell more quickly and for a higher price? And I know some of these are really obvious, but you would be surprised sometimes things that sellers don't think about. So one thing is decluttering. You want your home to look, I will say, magazine ready as much as possible. Even if you tuck things into closets, in totes in your garage, whatever, decluttering and having it look really clean and neat and presentable is huge, especially for your photos that are online. Even if you only do a very serious decluttering cleaning once, do it right before the photographer comes to take the pictures. It's important to also have it neat and clean for showings and smelling good in your house and all of that, but the pictures especially are huge. So I cannot emphasize enough decluttering. Think about when you are looking online on Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, whatever, and you're looking at properties, what stands out to you? What photos do you like to see? And what impression does that give you of the home if you see that it's cluttered? I try to talk to sellers about this. Sometimes people completely understand and they have their house very photo ready. Sometimes people don't understand it as much, and it is doing their listing a disservice in the long run if it's not decluttered and looking the way you would expect it to look if you were looking at identifying potential properties. Another thing is ask your agent if they have any suggestions for small repairs or improvement. Sometimes there's little things just like light switch covers or repairing a piece of trim or a stair tread or small things. They don't cost you a lot of money. They don't take a lot of time, but it's important because of the impression it gives a buyer about your home and how well you take care of your home. So agents know what buyers are looking for. We talk with buyers every day, so we know what things are important. We know what things to focus on. We know where you might get your money back by doing a small project like a bathroom floor and vanity that you're going to get your money back and then some if that's the only spot in the house that hasn't been updated, for example. So that's something that a good agent will be able to give you advice on. Any minor repairs or anything that's worth taking care of pre-listing that will help your house to sell better. Another thing is sometimes people ask me, should I do a pre-listing inspection? So in other words, the seller is hiring the inspector, paying the inspector, and having a report to provide with their listing. You can certainly do that, but I will tell you it's not very common at all. Most sellers wait for the buyer to see if the buyer even wants an inspection, as probably in this day and age and market we're in the fall of 2024, probably half of buyers are waiving inspections. So you may not need to spend the money. The other risk you run if you do get the inspection done is if there are defects, then you and your agent by law need to disclose those defects. And it may be something you don't want to get into ahead of time. However, if you do have a pre-inspection done, it does give your listing a little bit of a leg up, especially if you've taken care of any issues that may be present on the inspection report. But I will tell you, 98% of sellers do not do this. It's certainly not required, maybe sometimes not even advised. But if it's something you want to do to make your listing stand apart a little bit, it could be a good idea. And then also, what about staging? So unfortunately, in our area in Hayward and the surrounding areas, we do not have any professional staging companies. I do have someone that I work with who does an excellent job for light staging. There is data to suggest that a staged house definitely will sell better, especially empty versus being staged. So there's definite benefit to it, and you'd be surprised sometimes what a little bit of a light staging will do for the feel of your home, even how cozy and homey it feels when people walk into it. Another thing to consider is whether you should offer a buyer agent incentive. Now, I'm talking on top of the normal amount that you may choose to offer to a buyer's agent. If you want more information about the changes that have happened in 2024 in the realm of commissions and all of that, you can watch my video about that. But what I will say is since those changes on August 17th, very little has changed in terms of the fact that almost all sellers are still choosing to offer a buyer agent compensation. They just find that it benefits their property, doesn't disadvantage it because the buyer doesn't have to come out of pocket with that extra money. But I'm talking about an incentive on top of that. So let's say a bonus of $1,000 or $2,500 for if a buyer is brought to your property and it goes under contract within a certain time frame, etc. I would say that this is very market specific. I would not advise it at this time because we are in a seller's market and there's probably no need to offer an additional incentive on top of the buyer agent compensation or seller concession you're offering for that. But in a slower market where it's a buyer's market and you're trying to just bring buyers to your property and bring agents to your property, then offering a buyer agent bonus or a selling bonus of some sort could be a good idea. But in the market we've been in for the last number of years, the market we're in now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. Another thing that's huge with listing your home is professional photography. So I would say to make sure your agent hires a professional photographer, that's part of the service that they provide. Since most people are identifying their properties online, the way your property presents itself in the photos online is a really big deal. So I think that's being offered by majority of agents these days, but not nearly all of them. So that's a good question to ask. And it's something that I do provide as part of my service if you hire me as your listing agent. And then pricing competitively, like I say, pricing in the sweet spot, using the comps, taking that information, applying it to your property, and choosing a realistic sale price will not only get you the most money, also it will get you the quickest sale all at the same time. If you price outside of the comps or outside of other properties that are available at the same time, you just will not get much interest in your property. It'll sit on the market and you'll end up having to do price reductions, or it just won't sell at all, or it becomes stale. So pricing competitively, while it's not always easy to know exactly what that price is, in a fast-paced market where it's still a seller's market, the market will actually tell you what it should be. So if you're a little bit low, it'll go higher. If you're a little bit high and you don't get much activity in the first few weeks, then you would need to be looking at possibly lowering your price. Again, an experienced agent will be able to guide you really, really well in this decision. And as always, we listen to our sellers' input, but pricing appropriately is probably one of the biggest pieces for having your home sell for the most money and sell the most quickly. So I hope you found this to be a little bit helpful, and maybe the data will help you to decide if you're thinking about when should I list? Should I list this fall? Should I list in the spring? Is it bad to list in the summertime? All of those things. Hopefully I was able to answer some of those questions for you. As always, feel free to reach out. I'm Audrey Miller. I'm the broker owner of Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team right on Main Street in Hayward. I'd love to assist you whether you're buying or selling or just have questions about the area. If you have something you'd like me to talk about in one of my videos, if I feel like I have knowledge to do a video on it, I'd be happy to do that. Feel free to leave a comment, subscribe, like my channel. Always welcome. I'm happy to have you join me